panel is really the 4 Ps of craft. Some time ago, when I was working with Dalmia Cement, I launched a brand for Dalmia Cement called Craft Beton, where basically what we did was we made value-added products using cement. We worked with Indian and international designers to create luxury products with cement. And one of the products that we created was actually tiles, wall tiles, which are very three-dimensional and muralistic in nature. Now, to manufacture these tiles, I approached Bharat Tiles, who is one of the long-established manufacturers of cement tiles in India. In fact, they've been at it for more than 75 years. So I said, instead of reinventing the wheel, while we do the designing, I'll get the manufacturing done by them. So I went to meet their MD, and when I started discussing with him the possibility of doing this, he asked me what is the kind of price point that I was looking at for the product. And I said, I hope to be able to sell it upwards of 1,000 rupees a square foot. To which he said that why would anyone pay 1,000 rupees a square foot for a cement tile when you can get cement tiles for 100 rupees a square foot? So I told him that I don't think that is the right question. I said the right question is that what is it that I can do to the tile such that I can sell it at 1,200 rupees a square foot. And I think the answer to that question is really what 4 Ps of craft is all about. If we look at the 4 Ps of craft, which as all of you would know is product, as in product design, packaging, pricing of course, and the last one for the sake of craft is presentation, it is really the manipulation of these 4 parameters that can answer that question, that what is it that I can do to a cement tile to be able to sell it at 1,200 rupees a square foot. Now many years back, a lot of you weren't even born, we had something called the Green Revolution. We had something called the Green Revolution in India, right? And the Green Revolution was really raising the productivity in the rural areas of agriculture, and that was one of the first things that brought some degree of prosperity to the Indian farmer. It was a revolution largely driven through technology, driven through productivity, and driven by the government. Then we had the White Revolution, which some of you may remember is really the milk revolution that happened in the western parts of this country, which was largely driven by production, by processing, and by marketing, and by bringing in, packaging and other distribution efficiencies into the whole system, but again, driven really by the government, or at least one individual in the government. Then the question to ask is that what is the revolution that we can bring to craft for it to be able to emulate the kind of prosperity that we saw, or some degree of prosperity that we saw with the Green Revolution and the White Revolution. And the other question is, what do we call it? So like I was saying the other day, the only name I could think of was Rainbow Revolution, because the number of colors that we have in craft are so many. But what is it that we can do, and how is it that 4 Ps can help in that process? Now, one of the things I think most people would agree on is that you have to be able to raise craft up the value chain. If it keeps selling at very cheap prices, then you will get cheap quality, and the artisan will not be able to get the full value for his effort. So clearly you have to move it up the value chain, right? And the private sector, unlike the earlier revolution, has to play a major role in this, because the government really cannot play that kind of a role of moving it up the value chain. So while they're probably good at grassroots level activities, but when you look at the value addition activity, that really is not their forte.
Probably always think about 4 Ps, taking us back into the classroom in MBA. Of course, he did in a very premier institute in IIM Ahmedabad. I was director of NID Ahmedabad, but I would have never got admission in IIM. I did, MBA from a very modest school called School of Management Studies with the University of Science and Technology in Cochin. But the book was the same. He studied from Philip Kotler, 4 Ps. I also did the same. However, what I wanted to say a little bit different is that About 4 or 5 months back, a very large handicrafts organization, the Apex body, invited me to do some brainstorming about the strategies for the handicraft sector. So they asked me to visit an exporter. I don't want to name the city nor the context of it because it's too confidential, I would say. They asked me to visit this exporter and probably told me they are the best in the country. They represent the most impressive handicrafts from India. With all these expectations, I landed up in their factory, and I was taken to 2 places which are part of that huge setup. One was making salt and pepper bottles, which is basically a ceramic item, salt and pepper, shakers. The other was paper mache artifacts, which normally you find in hotels, to keep some planters or whatever. So I was asking, where is the other part which is supposed to be the world famous part of the best handicrafts from India? So they said, this is it. So I was very disappointed, So if this is what handicrafts is about, what I have seen when I was studying in FIT New York in 1987, when I was sent by Government of India to set up NIFT at that time, I had gone to Sona, the showroom of Handloom and Handicrafts Export Corporation. I visited Sona in Paris, in London, in New York, and there were spectacular handicrafts of India in that period. And here I am told that this is the handicrafts. So then I went to the room of this gentleman and I asked for a whiteboard and drew a simple matrix. I said that there will be utility handicrafts, which are salt and pepper and whatever you are making, for large Christmas, some gifts or something which you normally find in the gift fair. And then I drew the other quadrant called fashion handicrafts, which are related to whatever is what is popular in the time and in a context. Fashion is all about time. So in a time frame, if there is something which is going on in fashion and contextual and more people like it, there are some handicrafts items which peg into that area. And the other quadrant I drew as lifestyle. I remember one of the students from NID, when he was doing this accessory design or lifestyle accessory design program, created an entire box of lifestyle products which you should carry when you are traveling for work in different parts of India or wherever you go. It had a Rudraksh mala, it had some floor mats for yoga, all that kind of stuff. So I found it very impressive product items which it was like a handy bag which you could carry wherever you go for getting self-actualization to happiness which you are seeking. So they are what I call as handicrafts of lifestyle. And the last quadrant I said is about luxury handicrafts, which are curated products, which are really superb, which will give you that experience, which will then have, today we found a lady who is selling Shaza, which is a perfumed woman. So if a woman has come to your room and has gone and still the fragrance lingers, that is a story in itself. So that is what we call as a luxury, curated luxury. And there are many products in that category from handicraft. So I have drawn you the first P of your Somesh's 4 P's of craft. In the product, normally people are unable to understand all handicrafts are not the same. If you are able to draw these 4 quadrants into utility handicrafts, fashion handicrafts, and then luxury lifestyle handicrafts and luxury handicrafts, and start putting together what you see as handicrafts, you will have price which can be then fixed to understand what pricing strategy needs to follow. And then the channel will follow. What kind of channel should you be selling it? Should you be selling in Oberoi, or should you be selling in a tourist shop line in Kovalam, or in Odisha, in Puri in Orissa, wherever you are selling, what kind of products. And if it is digital marketing, like the ODOP, one district, one product of UP government has signed an agreement with Amazon, which sells the 75 districts of UP, if I am correct, and 75 different products, including 18 types of good, and Lucknow chicken curry, and the Firozabad bangle, and the Moradabad metal, all these are sold now through Amazon. And then you have the last one, how do you promote? Now the promotion will follow from the channel where you're selling it. So the 4-piece Somesh is not so difficult to disassemble. But I want to add 3 pieces to it, which are a little bit more complex. The other is, I would like to emphasize on people, because craft, if it does not connect with people, it does not have a long-term existence. Craft should become part of your life, and people are the key to all this. So how do you communicate craft to the people? So people is the next P. And then the purpose. Most important people feel in a digital world is purposeless life. There is no purpose. Why are you living? Why are you doing what you're doing? And craft often gives you the purpose. And if you are able to give in a dematerialized world, craft as a route to give you the connection to the culture, then the craft assumes the position of a direction and purpose which you are seeking. So that becomes the P. And the last one I would say is the P of purpose, people and planet. After all, why craft should exist is because of the planet. If the sustainability is not a goal, craft has no value. The economic and social unit of craft is what leads you to sustainability, repurpose, reuse, recycle. So if we are going to look at craft from sustainable point of view, then the 3 P's which you should add to the 4 P's, product, price, place, promotion, people, planet, purpose. The whole thing changes. And there I leave it, and when we come back in the second round, I will add some 4 more C's which should add to this piece. Then the whole story will become complete.
So I must actually begin by acknowledging once again that for me, 4 P's of marketing is Dr. Koshi. And it's not just a coincidence that both Dr. Koshi and Kotler starts with K. That was the first time I was ever introduced. Yeah. So almost like 28 years back, I felt all over again as though I'm sitting in one of those first sessions that I had at NIFT, because I think you've just explained it so beautifully. And the 3 P's that you just introduced is actually what Adhyam is about. So without really actually talking about Adhyam, I would say it's something which, the reason I am with Adhyam is because it celebrates the other 3 P's as well. And if I was to further elaborate and say one of the things that you very rightly said is about fashion, it is as meaningful as any other product. And therefore even craft needs to be seen as something which sits in the luxury space, something which sits in the mass, something which sits in the breadth space. And I think putting it all under a single bucket is sometimes going to be a negative for the craft, because the only way it can thrive is if we can continue to sell more and more of craft at affordable price. Because the minute we restrict it, the minute we say that this is only for the precious few, we've killed the market already. And the only reason why craft has survived in India for so many years is because it was consumed and worn by the people who used to make it, and it used to be sold in the local markets, it used to be consumed, it should be, of course, the connoisseurs. There's always a side which is for the connoisseurs, so the royalty commissioned special pieces, but the commoners wore the simpler pieces. So every craft has its level, and something which I think I've begun to appreciate because of my years with Adhyam now is that there is a way to put a tangible value to the craft, because it's simply about the number of days the craftsmen take to create that piece. And it's all right if there is a piece that gets created in 3 days versus something that gets created over 60 days. So that immediately gives an equation to you that which craft needs to sell at what value. And I think that is a perspective that when you give them something complex, they don't want to put that effort. It's literally like when you, even if you put it in the schooling context, if you just oversimplify the text, then the student is never going to evolve. They'll never strive to become better. They will never strive to learn beyond. And that's what is happening to many of our craftsmen. That with, sorry to say this, with some designer interventions, the product has been so simplified over the years that the craftsmen have forgotten how to make those gorgeous pieces. They just want to earn the same money by making simpler products. And that's not going to be right for the craft at all. So that brings in the pricing part of it and also the product part of it is what I feel. And just for the promotion and the the place part, I just want to say that we have to also stop seeing craft in, for lack of any other word, dowdy environments, because it needs to have the same kind of presence and the same kind of environment and the ambience that the rest of the fashion product enjoys. So even if it's a Pret product, you don't sell it out of a table or a shelf. It still gets the right environment, it still gets the great retail identity, and why should the craft not have it? So that's just a few thoughts to begin with, and
I think each sector's, I mean, it's quite difficult to say what each sector should take from each other. It's all matter of how we would decontextualize maybe the way our craft is used and then maybe apply that craft into another sector. For example, I mean, the problem that I see in India is that, first of all, there is no awareness of value. See, I'm coming from Italy, and all our craftsmen and the entire craftsmanship, it's as valuable as a designer. So in the concept of making the product itself, and in the way and the passion and the way how the product is treated. And on the audience, there's my colleague and friend Emmanuel, is also from Portugal, and that is pretty much the same. Here, unfortunately, people do not see craftsmen with the respect that they deserve. So that's one thing. And also I see that most of the time craft in India is misconceived because it's mostly seen as ethnic, which is a totally different sector altogether. So that's why I hardly see some kind of an experimentations that happen with craft. For example, I've never seen a block printed table, marble table. See, block print might be one technique that is utilized in textiles, but has it ever been explored in other sectors? Most probably not. I mean, I've been in India for 6 years, and I have not yet seen any such of a kind cases. So, borrowing from other sectors is something, of course, really, really important. But before that, when you were at the beginning, we were talking about revolution. I think one of the revolutions should happen here at the educational level, in the sense that in India and in Asia, I've been working in China, I worked in Thailand. Schools are busy to fight with each other for getting students. They're busy proclaiming themselves, this is better than this and that is better than that. But nobody has ever stopped to think how we see, in this case, craft from different perspective. And instead of fighting, maybe collaborate, because I'm sure that between the way how NIFT sees craft, or NID or Pearl Academy sees craft, and develop some kind of a free education. At the end of the day, it's just a module. Within 1 year of learning, then these artisans, they will understand a little bit more about design, and therefore they will be able more to experiment. Because as you rightly said, at the moment the only time that craft gets value is when Manish Arora or Manish Malhotra, both of them are utilizing craft and exporting. I mean, in the case of Manish Arora, is exporting that in Paris. I'll give you another example that when I first arrived in India, I shopped a bomber jacket from Zara, and that had a Zardozi embroidery. And everybody in India were asking me, where did you buy the jacket? But if they see any Zardozi item on the road, they will not stop and buy. Because, there is no, I think the revolution should happen at the educational level. We should be a little bit more liberal. We should be a little bit more friendly with each other. We should collaborate with each other. And if that happens, then if we are able, from an educational level, to offer some free education to these artisans, this is where you're going to learn about the packaging, the pricing. Because if you ask any artisans in the road, I mean, somebody might say, as you said, I had to spend 5 days to make this product, hence it's costing you 1,000 rupees. But sometimes it's not about the time, it's about the idea that is there behind. And even these people, I'm sure that, as well as the techniques, they have beautiful ideas. It's just they're not being able to explore. And nobody's been there from the government side also to support that to happen. So that's what I believe.
we got artisans from different crafts to work with each other. And one of the things that feedback that we got from them was that they'd never really worked with another craftsperson from another, from another craft. And because they tend to be very incestuous, it's all within their own craft itself. And they found that that was a very interesting way to get a completely different dimension to whatever they were designing and doing. And even yesterday we were discussing with the person from Malaysia that you see a lot of our crafts have come from overseas also, right? They're not just all, homegrown craft. And traditionally we used to learn a lot thanks to maybe traveling craftspeople used to travel, etc. But today maybe there are not sufficient platforms where different people from different crafts can actually learn from each other. So coming at the end to the lady.
Also, one last thing I want to say is also, at the moment in India, it's not an ambition to become a craftsman. Here, most of the students, they want to become fashion designers. No, none of them says, I want to become a pattern cutting master, which, for example, there are people in Italy like me that would love to go and work for being a pattern cutting of, doing pattern cutting for Louis Vuitton, for example. So that doesn't happen. I think it has to come from an educational level to have that kind of value to the, starting from the job to the profession, and hence, and then will become something that it will be positioning at a good level, because the amount of craft that India produces and exports, I think nowhere else in the world they are able to do the same thing. But the problem is that, most of the thing is like, okay, it's fine as it is. They don't go to the detail part. For that you need to be a little bit more educated. That's why I was proposing that probably one idea in the revolution should be collaboration between schools and try to identify how to make sure that they're able to understand what's beyond the actual exercise or the tool that they're actually having it.
So Meera, your organization, Creative Dignity, both the words in the name of that organization are really what it's all about. How do we get craftsmen to be more creative, and how do we get craft to be seen in a more dignified, so that people are aspirational in wanting to join crafts. So would you like to just share your thoughts on this whole subject of the 4 Ps and value creation?
So first of all, creative dignity is not about getting artisans to be more creative, but it's to give dignity to those who are creative. So I think there's a little difference there. I think I'd just like to go back to why did this happen, that artisans, Indian art and craft, which was so well known. I mean, if you look at the kind of masterpieces that our artisans turned out just like 50 years ago or 100 years ago, were so prized and so valued. And why has this happened? That today we feel the need to talk about how poor the quality has become, and that we need to improve the value of it and so on. I think it's not by choice. If that has happened, it's because of policies, it's because of societal structures, it's because 90% of artisans belong to economically, socially backward communities. It's because 80% sell in local economies, and local economies has not got the kind of support that big industry has got. I think the responsibility of people like us, the privileged, is really to create the right environment. The 4 Ps is a good system. I think it's a pathway between 2 worlds that are intersecting today. The world of the artisan, which is a different way of production, and the organized mainstream retail, wholesale, globalized way of doing business, which is a different system of production. And now we are trying to bring these 2 worlds together, and we are saying that, okay, now you convert to this system. I think the 4 Ps can be perhaps a bridge, but I feel there needs to be a 4 Ps also for the more organized system, as to understand this world better. And what is it about this world that can come halfway, and what is it about this world that can meet them halfway? And can something very new and different and beautiful emerge out of that? I think that's really the creative challenge. I'd just like to say that it's not easy when you think of what is that formula which will work to enhance value. I feel that the sector itself, being self-organized, is so varied So you have, you know, the artisans and almost like entrepreneurs, master artisans who came to our training, for example. I think for people like that who are exposed, who are connected to urban market, and they're probably just like 20% of the whole sector. For them, a 4Ps works very well, you know, and even there, in fact, I would tell Somesh that you need to look at how to customize it more, how to actually reach out to each artisan workshop in a more customized way, maybe through mentorship. You know, there could be ways we could brainstorm on. But for the majority of artisans, what is the need, you know, what that would help them? Would it be better organization? Would it be better access? Would it be new ways of doing business? Because knowledge they have, creativity they have, they know their stuff. You don't need to teach them their stuff. So I think there's a lot more deep diving that we need to do, you know. So I think what's required is really to look with a kind of multi-dimensional perspective. Like you're talking about local markets, right? I mean, recently we were looking at Durga Puja. Someone has estimated that it's an industry of 32,000 crore rupees, you know, just Durga Puja. So are there other markets which have traditionally been there? What is our entry into that? What is our understanding of that? How do we align with those? So yeah, I mean, this is some of...
So I mean, if you look at it classically, the 4Ps, understanding of the consumer is an extremely important part of that, for you to be able to do anything within that, whether we want to communicate, whether you want to develop products. Now the problem that we perhaps face today is that the artisan is being required to make functional products for markets he doesn't necessarily understand.
Exactly.
He's not lived that lifestyle,
Yes.
you know, and he doesn't really truly understand that lifestyle. So we were discussing this on another panel day before yesterday, which had some funders on the panel, and we were asking about what is it that makes people fund and not fund. And essentially what they said was that you actually need a layer of entrepreneurs between the market and between the artisan. Because the artisan does what he does well, but he's not necessarily going to be able to sort of evolve to that stage where he's going to understand the consumer, understand the market, understand all the dimensions of the 4Ps, etc. At least not all of them. Maybe some small percentage of them may manage that. So there needs to be this layer of entrepreneurs that interprets that. So what, if any, is your opinion on that? And then I'll ask the other people on there.
So I think intrinsically artisans are entrepreneurs, except even those who do piece rate, they are actually selling their time. So they are entrepreneurs and they are in control of who they sell their time to. So I think the challenge is to create conditions which nurtures this entrepreneurship. I mean, why like what Manish said, why are artisans looking for quick fixes? Because policies have just given subsidies. Policies have just given out freebies. They have never created conditions for entrepreneurship to blossom. You do that, like Kutch is an example, I mean, Juhi is also here, as to how entrepreneurship has blossomed. So it's yeah.
I just wanted to add a point because first I should say that I love the name Creative Dignity, because what I was saying earlier, that there's no need to show sympathy, there's no need to say that we have to bring them up. So I think the words are so beautifully chosen because it just needs the dignity. And to your point also as to why doesn't anybody aspire to become a pattern master? Because I think this whole industry, and thankfully craft is a little away from it still, this whole glamour side is so overemphasized that nobody wants to be the maker. Everybody wants to be the conceptualizer. Everybody wants to be the one who thinks beyond the box. But what about the makers? There's no respect for the makers. And I think that's why the word dignity really puts it really beautifully. So I just wanted to highlight that. And the other thing which I also wanted to elaborate further on was what you really again said, right, was that not just the craftsmen need to be taught the 4Ps, because I think the other side, the organized sector, needs to understand their 4Ps, because I think most of the time when I see things going wrong or businesses faltering, or when I hear bad stories from craftsmen because they feel cheated, or when they feel that they have not got their due, or they feel that there was a larger promise which wasn't met, is when the business which has worked with them has been non-sensitive to their requirements, and therefore they have done things which have really had a longer repercussion of them having felt not valued. And I think the more and more there will be businesses which are not going to be sensitive to this and still engage with them, it's again going to be a effect which is not going to be favorable. So I think more than what they need to learn, like you again rightly, I mean, we all agree that they already have so much talent, they already have so much skill. I don't think we need to teach them much. And it's not necessary that they need to be able to market also. So what really is the responsibility is the one who takes the role of marketing it or takes on the role of actually promoting it has to be sensitive to doing things right for them. Because not everybody needs to be a, you know, a master of all, and, you know, like, it doesn't have to be. They have a different talent, and if they do that better and brilliantly and more, that itself is enough for the craft industry.
But I just feel that in any trainer-trainee equation, there's a politics involved. And I feel, you know, if we can change that to make it an equal conversation, artisans will start feeling valued.
Yeah, you know, some very interesting points have been discussed. But what I wanted to say was that about few months back, I was in the Institute of Craft and Design in Jaipur. Tulika is the director who was earlier with NIFT, so I knew her. So when I was finishing the day, I told Tulika in a room that this institute, see, if its name is Institute of Crafts, it may not survive for long. But if you change the name to Institute of Craftsmanship and Design, it will remain. Because what is important is that we are trying to keep our discussion too focused on crafts. But what today's world is all about, just look at Swiss watches and how the craftsmanship is celebrated. The problem is that we have become too focused and obsessed on craftsmen and karigars. But what India requires is, in the climate which is today, where the government is ready to listen to you for, for skilling people, and craft of 3.5 crore craftsmen in the country, if you had actually focused on craftsmanship and made a program with the government to actually take it to creating the second circle around the farm migration of labor, which is about 40% of India's labor is in agriculture. The impact on the GDP is only 15%.
If we have to talk about whether it was the right decision or not, that's very much on how probably is the only Indian person who really sees himself as a brand, and I don't see that happening much around the country, because most of the people here design for an Indian people, but the Indian people of today travels everywhere. The Indian people of today sees the world, is connected to the world every single moment of their life, and therefore they have more awareness than what I would have had at their age in my country, for example. So there is a mismatch of the request and the actual product that it comes. I've never seen, I was talking on the way here again with Emmanuel about the idea of creating something to design sneakers, because the youth wants that, but then what if you apply some craft to the sneakers and you make an Indian sneakers, it will be equivalent, maybe popular as an Adidas, for example, within an Indian market and abroad, but that doesn't happen. Doesn't happen from the educational point of view. We don't teach students to use craft and design the next shoes for Puma, for example.
Meera, would you like to add something to?
No, I mean, I just feel that, to create a brand, there is a system and a method which we all, people like us, understand, because we come from a certain pedagogy and education. Maybe there are other ways to create brands, So my fear is, because I'm not an academic, I work with people, so I always, see from that perspective. My fear is that when we go with one kind of system, then somewhere we are communicating that this is the only way. It's like when the written word came into being, that meant that was superior to the oral culture, which is not the case. I mean, before we started understanding brands the way we do now, you had brands, like Patan Sari was a brand, Banaras Sari was a brand, Kanchipuram was a brand, but they were community brands, So can we think a little out of the box? Can we listen? Can we sit down? Can we have discussions? Can we bring in more voices of the artisans and work out and find a middle way, find a new way of doing things? Durga Puja is a brand, you know. So weddings are a brand where homemade products are made. So I think that it's not so simple with having one system, one template, one way of assuming, because the sector is so diverse. You know, so what will work in one situation may not work for the majority of the situation.
I have the pleasure of bringing this interesting panel to a close. This is not a subject that we can conclude on because it's too big a subject, but I think we had an interesting discussion where we got some, at least my takeaways was that in order to be able to apply these 4 Ps, some of the things that are very important are innovation, collaboration. It was interesting using craftsmanship instead of craft. I think that's a good takeaway. Another good takeaway I think is how is it that we can bring education bring students into craft early on. In fact, the other day I was on a panel where we were talking about skilling of women, and same thing came up where entrepreneurship is really not taught to our young people. I mean, I remember reading Dennis the Menace comics and he sells lemonade and earns 10 cents, you know. But in our comic books, we don't see people, you know, earning money. So I think entrepreneurship itself needs to actually also get taught to people. So thank you very much for your time and your valuable insights, and happy Diwali.
Thank you. Happy Diwali.